Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, aka Daddy Dreidels. Week 13 is in the books and playoff spots are filling up quickly. 3 more teams locked up postseason berths this week, while 2 more teams were mathematically eliminated. And with 2 purgatory spots this year, our middle-of-the-pack teams are making moves to avoid the toilet bowl. They're just not the right moves. We'll go around the league looking at this week's games, I'll preview next week's matchups, and we have a full breakdown of the league standings. All that and more right after this word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is BJ's Trophy Company. When you want a trophy to commemorate your big achievement, go get a BJ. As always, we'll kick things off with our matchup of the week. This week's marquee matchup featured PJ against Josh. Already riding a 4-game winning streak, PJ seems to be writing a rags to riches story as he took down Josh 216.18 to 143.95. The highest scoring team in Week 13, PJ was led by a pair of 40-point games from Devontae Adams and A.J. Brown as he locks up a playoff berth in his quest for redemption, not only from his awful start, but from last year. On the other sideline, Josh was led by captain Justin Jefferson with 27.9 points, and he also got 24.45 points from Justin Herbert. With this loss, Josh will not be able to finish first and get that all-important bye into the semifinals. However, Josh did score big last week as he popped the question to Allison and she said yes. Congratulations to you both. Now at 8-5, Josh has already locked up a playoff spot and will finish the regular season against Cheese, while 7-6 PJ will finish up against George. Speaking of George, he scored the second fewest points in the league this week, but still got the win over the aforementioned Cheese, 91.65 to 83.05. Led by Chris Godwin and his 16.7 points, George clinches the playoff berth with the hopes that Lamar Jackson's injury isn't too severe, where it would limit his postseason potential. Cheese's dismal effort was led by Tom Brady and his 23.95 points. However, losing in back-to-back weeks has guaranteed that Cheese will either be in or play for the toilet bowl, as he can only finish 11th or 12th. He will try to avoid the auto bid this week against Josh, while George will finish up regular season play against PJ. Turning now to the race for first place, I was able to hang on to the top spot for another week as I defeated Big John 175.95 to 167.8. Led by Captain Garrett Wilson with 43.8 points, I also got 38.6 from Tyreek Hill as I escaped with the narrowest victory of Week 13. Big John was led by Joe Burrow with 36.9 points, and he also got 32.8 points from Tyler Lockett. However, with the loss, Big John was unable to clinch a postseason berth this week. He needs a win and a loss by Jed this week in order to have a shot. I will face Jed in Week 14, while John will take on Kyle. As for Kyle, it's been, we'll call it a disappointing year for our defending champ. However, Little Swans was able to get back into the win column this week thanks to a 160.5 to 115.55 win over Jed. Led by Captain Jared Goff with 48 points, Kyle showed that while he might not make the playoffs this year, he's not afraid to play spoiler to those who will. At 4-9, Kyle will try to avoid the automatic bid for the toilet bowl this week when he takes on Big John, while 6-7 Jed will try to hold on to the final playoff spot against me. Another team with his eye on first place is Brett, who improved his chances with a 176.1 to 148.3 victory over Zach. Brett was led by Amon-Ra St. Brown with 39.6 points, and Brett also got 31 points from the Browns' D of all places. In addition, Brett won $10 for having the highest scoring kicker in Week 13, as Younghoe Koo led all kickers with 14 points. On the other sideline, Zach also won $10 this week for having the highest scoring overall player, as Jalen Hurts led all scorers this week with 50.2 points. Despite claiming that the league is tainted, Zach is now 5-8 and sits just 1 game out of a playoff spot. Like Big John, he needs a win over Swans this week, coupled with a loss by Jed in order to make the playoffs. And at 9-4, Brett can steal first place with a win over Armenti and a loss by me, provided Brett outscores my team by a half a point or more. Speaking of Armenti, our final matchup of the week had Armenti going up against Swans. And in the end, Swans showed that he can still win when he has to, as he got the W 158.9 to 148 over Armenti. Led by Samaji Perine with 26.5 points, Swans clinched a postseason spot in the hopes that he can get over last year's hump and take the trophy home for Rocco. Armenti was led by quarterback Geno Smith with 34.65 points, and he also got 28.4 points from Christian Watson. At 5-8, Armenti is also a fringe team who needs a win and a loss by Jed to have a shot at the playoffs, but with Cooper Kupp still on IR, will he be able to do any damage if in fact he does make the postseason? He will try to sneak in at the death when he takes on Brett in Week 14, while Swans will finish up regular season against Zach in our Matchup of the Week. Here are the standings as we head into the final week of the regular season. Because of the intricacy of the standings, we're going to do things a little differently this week. I currently sit in first at 10-3 with 2,040.16 points scored. Brett is the only team who can catch me, as he is 9-4 with 2,039.71 points scored. Keep in mind, points scored is the tiebreaker for seeding. Josh, 2U, and Swans sit 3rd, 4th, and 5th respectively, all at 8-5. PJ is 7-6, clinching a playoff spot after a terrible start to the season. Jed is 6-7, currently holding on to the last playoff spot, but here's where things get interesting. Big John, Zach, and Armenti are all 5-8, only one game back of Jed for 7th, and they all have more points scored than him. So in short, Jed cannot afford any mistakes this week. He needs a win, or he most likely won't make the playoffs. In the basement is Kyle at 11th at 4-9, and Cheese is in last at 3-10. These two teams will be fighting to avoid the toilet bowl, as one will clinch the auto bid this week, while the other will have one last shot at redemption next week. Well, boys, we're down to the final week of the regular season. We have 4 teams fighting for one playoff spot, and it is entirely possible that in 2 weeks, Jed could go from being in the playoffs to being in the toilet bowl. Who will get the final playoff spot? Who will secure a first-round bye, Brett or me? And who will get the auto bid to the toilet bowl, Cheese or Kyle? All these questions and more will be answered in just 1 week. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been your Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am Daddy Dreidels, and I will see you next time. L'chaim, motherfuckers!